Do you want an amazing marriage? Are you ready to take your marriage to the next level? Then stick around for Your Marriage Matters podcast with marriage coach Lynn. Let's put some fun and sizzle into your relationship.
Welcome to a new series on the Your Marriage Matters podcast. Over the years, I've read hundreds of books on marriage, and I'd like to do a 6-part series on some of the most profound and relevant resources for Catholics. Those who marry in the Catholic Church are afforded a beautiful sacrament as part of their wedding day. The vows are beautiful, and the theology behind the sacrament is deep and designed for couples to have a lifelong successful and happy marriage. For the next 6 weeks, we're going to talk about 6 of my favorite books from a Catholic perspective. If you're not Catholic, you're still welcome to read these books. There's a lot of good information on marriage. For the next 6 episodes, I will discuss a different book, and at the end, you'll have 6 solid resources to refer to. 20 years ago, the first edition of Covenanted Happiness, Love and Commitment in Marriage was published. Now, in its 3rd edition, it's a classic book that talks about conjugal love, why marriage is in crisis, and what to do about it. It talks about divorce and the consequences for spouses, children, and society. Cormac Burke, the author, talks about contraception and family planning and love and family in today's world. There's a good section on ideals we have in marriage and how youth and children enhance marriage. Like other books that I will talk about in this series, Cormac Burke talks about certain rules and natural law and why it's important to follow natural law and why we get into predicaments and encounter unhappiness and demise in marriage. I want to spend some time talking about contraception because this was a big part of the book. The author starts out by saying that love is falsified if body and spirit do not say the same thing. He uses strong language. Burke says that contraceptive intercourse falls below mere pantomime. It is disfigured body language. Quote, "If man and woman feel a deep longing for sexual union, it is also because they have, each one personally has, a deep longing for all that is involved in true sexuality: self-giving, self-complementarity, self-realization, self-perpetuation in spousal union with another." End quote. Let's dissect these last few words. What is self-giving? Do we really desire to give of ourselves to others or to take from others? Think about that. Self-complementarity. A male and female are unique and different. They complement each other. They have their individual roles and part of a whole. Our sex as a male or female is heightened and reaffirmed when we encounter the opposite sex. Self-realization. Again, we are affirmed. We notice the difference. We feel as if we matter, and we realize our uniqueness as contrasted to our partner. Self-perpetuation. A biological necessity of life is that we are able to perpetuate ourselves. We regenerate. We live on when we can reproduce. Union with each other. We long to have an authentic connection with another human being. We feel more alive when we can be authentic. In the chapter on children as values, Burke says, quote, "So many marriages today are suffering from self-privation, a voluntarily induced impoverishment brought about by a refusal of the gift of life and a rejection of the fruitfulness of love. Our modern, well-off Western society may go down in history as the deprived society, where people, entire peoples, have been ailed to death by having a sense of true human values gradually sucked out of their lives." Burke goes on to say, quote, The reality of sex is being totally put aside, and people are being left with a mere pantomime of sex. What is being separated is the very body of sex from the soul of sex, and what is being left is the corpse of sex. What contraception gives people is apparent body sex. That is actually soulless sex. It is a mummified sexuality, dead sex. Our modern world is busy in the process of killing human sex and sexuality. End quote. I have always wondered why so many women report a lack of interest in sex at some point in their lives. I suspect one reason could be that they do not feel humanly cherished for their sexual and procreative uniqueness or potential. When humans are being used, perhaps they sense this at the cellular level. We have to remember that love is other-centered, not self-centered. This is why you'll hear me say that we need to select our mates not with the mindset that we are choosing the right partner, but that we are being the right partner first. We must bring to the table a desire to offer to another person something magnificent, not a sense that we are searching for someone to complete us. My husband has been saying for more than 20 years that a husband's job is to make his wife happy. If he focuses on pleasing his wife, she is happy and all is well. I would agree with that. Not that any one of us can make another happy, but that if we focus on the other rather than the self in a selfish way, we will reap a mutually satisfying relationship. I want to also insert here the idea of natural fertility method or natural family planning. These are techniques that take into account natural law, the dignity of the human person, and offer the best health for men and women as far as no medical, chemical, or spiritual side effects from birth control. I have followed this technique for a large portion of my adult life, and I can attest to the fact that I've had superior reproductive health over the years. FAM, or Fertility Awareness Method, or NFP, Natural Family Planning, can set men and women free in many ways. Here is an interesting quote about birth control and wanton sexuality. Quote, however, if he allows his concupiscence free rein, he ends up losing freedom of spirit. He becomes a slave to his passions and capable of responding only to the promptings of his animal nature. End quote. Cormac Burke talks about self-enrichment in marriage and reminds us of Paul VI's words. A married love that is fully human is a compound of sense and spirit. It is not then merely a question of natural instinct or emotional drive. It is also, and above all, an act of the free will, whose dynamism ensures that not only does it endure through the joys and sorrows of daily life, but also that husband and wife become in a way one heart and one soul, and together attain their human fulfillment. End quote. Some of these ideas are very difficult in our culture. Burke says that basically it's not that marriage has gone wrong for modern man, but that man has abused it and it no longer works in his service. The people who pay the least heed to the laws of the church are those who are finding the least happiness in marriage. Continuing on, quote, people have the right to expect happiness from marriage, but only from the type of marriage that nature instituted, and only when it is lived with God's grace in accordance with its natural design and its natural laws. Not to respect that design or those laws is to denaturalize what was made to help man toward his happiness and salvation, and to turn it, sooner or later, into a source of his misery and frustration. End quote. And another quote, the number is constantly growing of married couples who have understood the greatness of the divine plan in which God, by calling them to marriage, has given them a share. And so, strengthened by grace, they have been able to face up to the sacrifices of love, that love itself needs for its very survival. Some of the other thoughts I like in this book: rules and restrictions do not limit our freedom. We have to train our will. There is a lot of moral decontamination we have to be wary of. Self-censorship is important. One of his later chapters is about a permissive society. Some might call it progressive, when we have acceptance of an anything-goes mentality, of selfish pursuits, as opposed to honorable concern for the welfare of others. We have increased likelihood of violence. When pornography, abortion, and exploitation is allowed free rein, we have chaos, terrorism, slavery, immaturity, corruption, and violence. We turn people into objects, all under the false pretense of freedom. In Chapter 12 on Love, Family, and Society, Burke points out that John Paul II said in 1994 that Western society is going pathological and that our culture is creating profound distortions in man, and the way out of this is to adopt a civilization of love. A big problem is that we are a culture of consumerism and that we use people. When we no longer have use for certain people, we discard or get rid of it. God's love is never in a state of pathology, but the way humans love is distorted, especially when it's self-seeking. Man is created for love, with an ability, a tendency, and a need to love. In calling man into existence, God's plan was that man should be conceived in love and grow in love, that his experience of life should be matured in a particular school of love, which is the family, constituted by the marital union of man and woman. Through marriage and family, God wishes to send love, and with it, goodness, into the world. The title of today's book was Covenanted Happiness, Love and Commitment in Marriage by Cormac Burke. Get a copy and be inspired to live a life filled with love. Until next time, make your marriage great.